It was a perfectly normal day at the Fuchs household. The sun shone through the windows, birds chirped in the garden, and in the kitchen, a large pot of vegetable soup simmered on the stove. Mama Fuchs was diligently stirring the soup, while Papa Fuchs sat at the table reading the newspaper. The children, Max and Leah, were playing a fun card game on the living room carpet. The only one who seemed a little restless was Rudi, the family dog. He paced from corner to corner, sniffing curiously in the air. Maybe he smelled the vegetable soup, or perhaps he just had the feeling that something extraordinary was about to happen. And indeed, it was. Suddenly, a bright flash of light illuminated the entire living room. Max and Leah looked up, Papa dropped his newspaper, and Mama Fuchs turned around in surprise. But before anyone could react, everyone, except for Rudi, was caught in a glowing beam of light and lifted into the air. They screamed in fright as they floated up through the roof of the house into the sky. The bright light carried them higher and higher until they eventually disappeared without a trace. Rudi, who had been watching everything with wide eyes, was frozen in shock. What had just happened? His family was gone, simply vanished. He barked loudly and ran around in circles, but no one could hear him. Yet something was different. The particles from the mysterious light had landed in the vegetable soup, which was still bubbling in the kitchen. In his excitement, Rudi sniffed at the soup and licked a little of it. Suddenly, he felt strong, very strong. He looked down at himself. His paws were glowing, and he felt an incredible power surging through him. Rudi felt a tingling sensation all over his body, and before he knew it, he was lifting off the ground. He was flying. Amazed, he barked in joy, did a few loops, and shot out of the window. With a heroic feeling in his chest, he knew he now had a mission to save his family. But where were they? He looked around and spotted a gigantic spaceship high up in the sky. It shimmered silver and sparkled in the sunlight. That had to be the place where his family was being held. Without hesitation, Rudi shot off like a bolt of lightning towards the spaceship, ready to face anything that stood in his way. When Rudi reached the spaceship, he realized how enormous it was. It had countless hatches, windows, and tubes stretching out in all directions like tentacles. With a mighty leap, he broke through the outer hull and landed inside the ship. The aliens controlling the ship stared at him in bewilderment. They had prepared for anything, but not a flying dog. The aliens looked strange, tall, green, with long arms that wrapped around their bodies like snakes. They hissed and growled, but Rudi wasn't intimidated. With a heroic leap, he pounced on the first aliens and overwhelmed them with a powerful swipe of his paws. One after the other, they fell, and Rudi made his way through the spaceship. After navigating through a few corridors and doors, Rudi finally discovered his family. They were trapped in a large glass container, surrounded by aliens who were loudly hissing and discussing something. Rudi perked up his ears and overheard that the aliens were planning to study the humans and keep them as pets on their planet. Rudi couldn't allow that. With a mighty leap, Rudi landed in the middle of the room. The aliens turned and hissed at him, but Rudi was faster. He grabbed the control panel with his teeth and pulled as hard as he could. With a loud crack, the wires snapped, and the glass container opened. Max, Leah, and their parents fell to the floor and looked in amazement at their four-legged rescuer. "Rudi, it's really you!" Max shouted in excitement as he jumped up and hugged Rudi. Rudi knew time was running out. The aliens were regrouping and preparing for a counterattack, but Rudi was far superior to them. With one last mighty jump, he sprang onto the spaceship's control panel and started pressing buttons wildly. The spaceship began to rumble and shake, and suddenly it shot toward Earth. With a triumphant bark, Rudi safely guided the spaceship through the clouds and gently landed it in the Fuchs family's garden. The aliens were overwhelmed and didn't dare to resist any further. Rudi had done it. His family was safe back on Earth, and the spaceship could no longer pose a threat. Back home, everyone cheered. "Rudi, you're our hero," Leah exclaimed as she hugged him tightly. Papa Fuchs patted him proudly on the back, and Mama Fuchs served everyone a large bowl of her vegetable soup. Even Rudi got an extra portion. And so they all sat peacefully around the table again. But this time, Rudi wasn't just the lovable family dog. He was also the brave superhero who had saved them all. From that day on, everyone knew. No matter what happened, with Superdog Rudi, the Fuchs family was always in safe paws.